Chapter 8 The Giant Great Ancestor. A blinding light flashed over the grasslands. The wind blew, birds cried out, trees and bushes trembled. Speedy swiveled his head to look around. He let out a shriek. Jack and Annie turned to look behind them. A creature was rising up from the blowing tall yellow grass. He had a massive head with upright ears. He had a thick neck as long as a giraffe's. Slowly the creature rose to its full height. He stood as tall as a 2-story building. The body of the ancient creature was covered with hairless gray skin that looked like armor. His 4 legs were as thick as huge tree trunks. Rosie and her baby froze in place. The masked poachers stopped too. Annie and Jack gasped. "The rhino's great ancestor," said Annie, "from 30 million years ago." "Oh man," Jack whispered, "this isn't real." "It's real, totally real," said Annie, "and it's magic." The prehistoric rhino started moving toward them, his huge feet crushing the tall grass. As the creature came closer, his head swayed from right to left. He looked at the 2 smaller rhinos and the helicopter parked on the ground. Then he stopped and glared down at the 2 masked men. The giant let out a low, deep sound, a strange bellowing that seemed to come from a world before the time of humans. The creature's voice grew louder and louder until its booming roar shattered the air. The prehistoric giant started moving toward the poachers. Faster and faster, his thundering footfalls shook the ground. The poachers howled in terror. They dashed to the chopper. They scrambled back into the cockpit. The rotor blades started spinning. The helicopter lifted off the ground, rocking from side to side. A whirlwind of dust blew up from the dirt road. The chopper rose shakily through the dust. It almost tipped over. The ancient rhino looked up and bellowed again. The fleeing helicopter rose higher. It turned and sputtered away across the sky. The chopper was gone. The grassland seemed stunned into a watchful silence. The birds and frogs were quiet. Rosie and her calf didn't move. Jack and Annie were speechless. Speedy broke the stillness. He slipped out of Annie's arms. Jabbering excitedly, he jumped onto the baby rhino's back. From there, he leapt onto Rosie's head. From there, he scrambled onto the back of the ancient rhino. Speedy hugged the giant's neck. He made happy noises as if welcoming the ancient creature to this world. The huge rhino lowered his head and looked around again. Then he started moving toward Rosie and her baby. Jack held his breath, afraid for their safety. But as the giant stepped closer to them, Rosie and Rosita walked toward him as if to thank him. The giant rhino leaned over. He nuzzled Rosie's head with his own. Then the 3 of them stood calmly together. "Let's go down. It's safe now," Annie said. Jack nodded. He felt the same. The peace among the rhinos seemed to extend everywhere. Jack and Annie climbed down from the tree. They slowly approached the rhino family. Annie stroked the baby's head. Then she rested her hand on Rosie. "Hi there, this is your great ancestor," she said softly. "He saved you." Jack reached out and touched the leathery skin of the ancient ancestor. The giant gazed at Jack and Annie with soft dark eyes. He dipped his large curved head down to touch their heads. Then the creature stood up straight, looming over them all. "Thanks for saving them," said Annie, looking up at him. "Yes, thank you," Jack murmured. "Thank you for helping us." The giant seemed to nod. Then he turned and began walking away. Speedy climbed down from the creature's back and jumped into Annie's arms. Jack, Annie, Rosie, and her calf stood together. They watched the prehistoric rhino stop for a moment. He nibbled leaves from the top of the tallest umbrella-like tree. Then he kept plodding across the yellow plain. They watched the creature move through the tall, swaying grass until he vanished into the bright African sunshine. "Goodbye," Annie said softly. Jack didn't speak. He was still in shock. Suddenly the sound of an engine came from behind them. Jack and Annie turned and saw the Ranger's Jeep rumbling down the road. "Shawnee and Jomo!" cried Annie. "They're back!" The Jeep came to a halt. The 2 Rangers leapt out. "Get away from the rhinos, kids!" Jomo shouted. "You're in great danger!" No, no, we're not, Jack said, finding his voice. Actually, we're fine. We're all totally fine.